Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to our English news edition coming to you from Canal Algérie. I'm your host, Meissa Doumas. To the headlines. The President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, Supreme Chief of the Armed Forces, Minister of National Defense, will chair a meeting of the Council of Ministers devoted to the examination and follow-up of the National Program of Seawater Desalination. The social policy of the Algerian state, as well as the recent tax exemptions, succeeded in controlling international price increases and their impact on employees compared to other countries. On Sunday, February 13th, we commemorate the 62nd anniversary of the infamous nuclear tests carried out by the French colonizer in southern Algeria. The explosions of the first atomic bomb, called Blue Gerbil, was 4 times more powerful than the one of Hiroshima. It offers the capital a real breath of fresh air. Jardin d'Essai of El Hamma has reopened its doors after an exceptional closure that lasted more than 10 days. Those were today's headlines. First in our news, the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, Supreme Chief of the Armed Forces, Minister of National Defense, will chair on Sunday a meeting of the Council of Ministers devoted to the examination and follow-up of the National Program of Seawater Desalination, the supply of the national market in consumer products, in addition to the presentation of the revival of the electric industries. The Council will also address issues related to the daily life of citizens and will adopt a draft law and presidential decrees. According to observers, the social policy of the Algerian state, as well as the recent tax exemptions, succeeded in controlling international price increases and their impact on employees compared to other countries where workers were heavily affected by these spikes. من العماري.
The Algerian state's social policy, reinforced by recent tax exemptions, succeeded in minimizing the effects of the current worldwide price increase in foodstuffs on employees. Compared to other countries where employees were strongly affected by these inflations, people with low income in Algeria had a big boost to their wages, thanks to tax exemptions and the rise of the National Guaranteed Minimum Wage, also known as SNMG, adopted by the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, who reiterated his commitment to pursue the state's social policy, advocated in the Declaration of November 1st, 1954. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, warned of these worldwide rises and of their serious consequences, since they are at their highest in almost 10 years, with a surge of up to 88% for corn, over 50% for wheat, and over 40% for foodstuffs. The Algerian state always took all the necessary measures to shut down all speculations, attempting to shamelessly take advantage of the absence of repressive laws to cause huge spikes, namely the latest policies adopted by the Algerian state, which were implemented to eradicate this issue.
Talking about the latest policies adopted by the Algerian state implemented to help new investors to go beyond bureaucracy issues, the finance law of the year 2022 that provides several tax and legislative measures to encourage and facilitate investments, whether local or foreign, for the benefit of young entrepreneurs. The example today is from Bashar province. The details with Letisa Sidqawi.
A year dedicated to industry. The year 2022 will be dedicated in particular to the economic recovery. The 2022 finance law provides for many incentives for economic operators, including the removal of bureaucratic obstacles.
This production unit was created in 2014. Our projects benefited from several facilitating measures, which enabled us to start. Thanks to these measures, economic operators hope to have more opportunities and to definitely end the administrative obstacles.
The Finance Law 2022 also aims to bring the legal and regulatory framework in line with the current economic environment in order to free and encourage local and foreign investment.
We are working in the Chamber of Commerce and Industry to study the needs of the market so as to set up a map and a roadmap dedicated to local, national or even foreign investments.
These new measures have allowed Algeria to occupy the 4th place of the 10 best African countries to invest in 2022, according to the American website, the Business Insider Africa.
Let's listen to the story of this investor from the province of Oran who has been able to revive his activity in the field of scented oils after obtaining his operating license. The essential oils are intended for the manufacture of cosmetic products and detergents. Leticia Sidqawi with the details.
Neither the administrative obstacles nor the freezing of his project for nearly 9 months could discourage this investor. As soon as he obtained his operating permit, he relaunched his unit specialized in industrial scented oils, intended for the production of detergents and cosmetic products. It was following the decisions taken by the President of the Republic that we were finally able to restart our unity. All of the facilitations were granted to us. Administrative obstacles have been removed. Before closing, we had 70 employees. Unfortunately, we were forced to dismiss some of them, but today I am gradually reintegrating employees. The company relies on the training of its staff and targets universities in a field where technical experience is mandatory. I am preparing my dissertation this year and I am on a practical internship in this laboratory to gain more experience in this field. We have been fortunate to be able to work in the field of perfume industry and thus be able to participate in the development of our products. Before, we produced 450 tons per year and we hope today to exploit our wealth and produce the plants to reduce the import bill. Encouraging this kind of investment contributes greatly to the recovery of the national economy, especially after the lifting of the freeze on suspended projects. Our role is to support investors who are already active or those who are in implementation phase. You should know that we have lifted the freeze on 37 suspended projects. It is worth noting that according to the latest guardianship decisions, the removal of barriers to investment, currently limited to projects completed but not initiated to administrative reasons, will now be extended to projects in progress.
On Sunday, February 13th, we commemorate the 62nd anniversary of the infamous nuclear tests carried out by the French colonizer in southern Algeria. The explosion of the first atomic bomb, called Blue Gerbil, was 4 times more powerful than the one of Hiroshima. 62 years after the nuclear test, France, which refuses to assume its responsibilities, is called upon to decontaminate the sites and compensate the victims of these criminal tests. Rania Al-Bahri will tell us more about it.
The nuclear bomb is a devastating weapon for the environment and humanity. On February 13, 1960, the French colonial army blew up its first nuclear bomb in the region of Regan in Adrar province, southern Algeria, with a power of 70 kilotons plutonium, 5 times more powerful than that of Hiroshima, which formed a radioactive cloud that spread for several days to Central Africa, Spanish coasts, and Sicily. The Blue Gerbil is only the beginning of a long series of air-and-ground nuclear explosions conducted in southern Algeria, where 17 nuclear bombs were blown up in silence from 1960 to 1966, demonstrating the barbaric methods of French colonizers who made these areas as testing ground and human beings as guinea pigs. These nuclear explosions destroyed the environment and health. It caused cancer and distortions resulting from exposure to radioactive radiation, with the risk of transmissions of all forms of diseases between generations as cancers, congenital malformation, and infertility. These nuclear explosions are among the worst crimes against humanity committed by the colonial forces that have always gone unpunished, while the population continues to suffer from radiation effects. France, with its heavy nuclear past, refused always to assume its responsibilities towards Algeria. It doesn't hesitate to admit its responsibility for the nuclear test conducted in Polynesia. The worst so far, France continues to refuse the return of archives related to nuclear explosions in order to allow the identification of nuclear waste, burial sites, and the identification of contaminated areas to avoid new victims. This nuclear weapon caused massive death and destruction, which harmed the health and well-being of humans for a long term. Now the compensation of France to the Algerian victims must be raised sharply and became more than urgent.
The first ordinary session of the Council of the National Observatory of Civil Society was held on Saturday. It was installed by the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, as a consultative body. The president of the observatory, Abdurrahman Hamzawi, said that the work of this session is focused on the organizational component related to the finalization of the composition of the structures of the observatory and on the examination of several files at the head of the work plan of the observatory. The meeting took place in the presence of advisors to the President of the Republic and members of the government, as well as members of the observatory. And at the National Institute for Advanced Strategic Studies, the former President of the Republic of Niger, Mohamedou Issoufou, held a conference entitled Strategic Challenges in the African Sahel Region and Their Implementation for Stability in the Region. The event was attended by the Director General of the National Institute of Global Statistic Studies, Abdelaziz Mujahid, and Foreign Affairs and National Community Abroad Minister, Ramtan Al-Amamra, an event during which many expert professors took part. To COVID-19 updates now, 503 new confirmed cases, 391 recoveries, and 12 deaths were recorded during the last 24 hours, according to the Health Ministry, which keeps reiterating that getting vaccinated is the only way to curb the spread of the pandemic once and for all. The COVID-19 health crisis provoked major anxiety among citizens. Most of them are systematically being scanned without medical advice. The details with Rania Al-Bahri.
The fourth wave of COVID-19 pandemic actually created a climate of anxiety between the population, especially with the new variant Omicron. The citizens flocked to laboratories without knowing the type of tests to be carried out. Not only this, but the massive recourse to self-medication. The first time when I have been contaminated with COVID-19, I consulted a doctor, but after my second contamination, I bought medicines myself without visiting any doctor. I was contaminated twice by COVID-19. I decided to carry out my test in the laboratory without going to the doctor. The antigenic tests are equivalent to PCR tests when patient doesn't exceed 5 days after the appearance of symptoms. Another problem due to this fourth wave is the confusion between the symptoms of cold, seasonal flu and those of COVID-19. According to specialists, medical consultation remains the only way to make the difference. The symptoms of COVID-19 are almost similar to those of the flu, especially in children. Omicron virus can also cause breathing problems. That's why you need to be diagnosed by a doctor. Medical consultation remains necessary in all situations, and specialists continue to warn against the dangers of self-medication.
To international news now, the Geneva Support Group for Western Sahara has stressed the need to continue efforts to make the voice of Sahrawi people heard in the UN Human Rights Council and other international bodies. On the ground, units of the Sahrawi Liberation Army targeted on Friday the trenches of the Moroccan occupation forces in Al Hawza sector with fierce bombardments, according to a military communique issued by the Sahrawi Defense Ministry. On the Libyan issue, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called on all Libyan parties to continue maintaining the stability of Libya as a top priority, reminding all parties and institutions of the primary objective of holding elections as soon as possible, stressing the need to ensure the vital decisions are taken in a transparent and compliant manner. This occurred on the context of recent political developments in Libya in light of the continuing division over the post of prime minister. In the evolving Ukrainian crisis, U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan warned of the soon Russian invasion of Ukraine, estimated that it would be in about a week, that is, before the end of the Winter Olympic in Beijing, calling on all Americans to leave the country, while military aid is still arriving to Kyiv from various Western countries, led by the United States. Russia has denounced what it is described as a campaign of lies and hysteria that Washington is standing behind to further escalate the situation. This comes at a time when Presidents Biden and Putin are expected to hold a call on Saturday to try to reduce the growing escalation in the region. Moving on to the sad news, the death of the famous actor Mustafa Perrer on Friday night in Algiers at the age of 87, leaving behind him a full and rich career marked by success in various disciplines and with more than 70 years in the service of the Algerian culture. He was also an animator, production manager at the National Television and Radio, musician and actor at the television and cinema. He started his artistic career in 1948 on the theater stage before joining the ranks of the National Liberation Front at the outbreak of the Liberation War. Mustafa was buried on Saturday in the cemetery of Al-Qattar in Algiers. To Allah we belong, and to Him we shall return. We end our news edition with these breathtaking images of the Jardin d'Essai of El Hamma, which offers the capital a breath of fresh air. It reopened its doors after an exceptional closure that lasted more than 10 days. Given the epidemiological situation, our journalist Manal Ammari has the details.
Built in 1832, the Jardin d'Essai of El Hamma is considered as one of the most important gardens in the world, a palette of biodiversity and a gift from nature, which finally reopened its doors for the public's pleasure. The Jardin d'Essai is an oasis in the city. Today, we should grow more gardens like this one, relying on science and research to create useful areas from a scientific point of view that are also leisure areas. Across 32 hectares, hundreds of floristic and faunistic species are intertwined in perfect harmony. We have 3 species of sycamore trees in the garden, namely Platanus orientalis, Platanus occidentalis, and a hybrid between the two. We also have another species called dragon trees. Even though this jewel has various plants and flowers, this microclimate is undergoing many deteriorations. We have the tree of heaven and exotic plants that wreaks havoc throughout the territory. We also have palm trees, namely the Washingtonia palms. I believe that nowadays we have to really accentuate the botanical gardens in the country and promote them. This is a challenge to take up, so as to preserve the splendor of this world heritage, known as the El Hamma Garden.
That was it for our news edition. Thanks for tuning in to our program. Good night.